to Your Health is Your Wealth. My name is Argo Duenas and I'm your host for today. I'm also the owner of Back to Nature Health and Wellness Center, located at 115 Ridgely Avenue in Annapolis. We have been serving the Annapolis, Baltimore, D.C., Eastern Shore, Virginia area for over 30 years. We offer a variety of holistic services to include detox programs, colon hydrotherapy, energy work like Reiki, ionic foot baths, and nutritional counseling. The mission of this show truly is to not only raise the health awareness about our bodies, mind, and spirit, and to also address social issues, but to also present positive role models and interviews of people who are doing amazing things in the community, who are following their passion and living on purpose. I have as my very special guest today, Judge Claudia Barber. She's here to share her personal story and to share with us her passion about equal justice under law. And I am so happy to have you and humbly honored to have you as my guest today.
Thank you.
Judge Barber, you have such an extensive, oh my God, bio, and you've done so much in the community. If you would give me a few minutes, I'd like to make my viewers aware of some of your accomplishments. Is that okay?
Sure.
So I understand you have served more than 10 years in the District of Columbia as the administrative judge. Is that correct?
As an administrative law judge.
Law judge.
Yes.
Forgive me. Also, prior to your judgeship as an administrative law judge
Yes.
in D.C., you've had your own practice for 16 years
Yes.
in Laurel, serving the community there.
Pretty much, yes.
In D.C. as well as Maryland. Is that correct?
Practicing in both D.C. and Maryland, correct.
And you're also served as District 4 Director of the National Association of Women of Judges.
Yes, it's a national organization, and its mission is to improve the court system, gender equality, and it has had many founding members that took up women causes.
Okay.
So they have many subcommittees and committees that really work effectively in the community through the National Association of Women Judges. You have a Maryland chapter
Okay.
that's very active in actually the Women Moving Forward program in Maryland, which is a program to assist women who are ex-offenders. They're transitioning from the prison system into the community, and we assist from that aspect. It's really a brainchild of Judge Kathy Surratt of the Circuit Court for Prince George's County.
Okay. So a lot of good things really championing the causes of women. And I do believe right now in our planetary evolution that the feminine energy is rising. Am I right?
Yes, definitely.
And so also in 2018, Judge Barber, you have been working with the NAACP as their legislative arm. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, that was an exciting role because I had the opportunity to have a very active role in preparing testimony that was presented by the NAACP for NAACP causes. And for example, one of the pieces of testimony I wrote about was Ban the Box, which is the legislation that was drafted to help people who have criminal records when it comes to their employment application.
Right.
Because there's always this implicit situation where if they truthfully answered the question, have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes, yes.
It almost routinely results in the denial of the application before you even get to step 2.
Yes. Well, we're going to segue into that with the new Jim Crow. Get this, Michelle Alexander's book on the mass incarceration of people of color.
Yes.
But before we do that, I want my viewers to know a little bit more about the personal Judge Barber. Let's
Okay.
talk. Let's go back a little bit. Let's
Okay.
reflect and go back into your past, because
Okay.
this program really is about inspiring young people and all of us to pursue our passion. You're a native Baltimorean.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I attended both Baltimore City and Baltimore County public schools.
Mm-hmm.
And after I completed Baltimore County public schools, I attended Goucher College.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there for 4 years, earning a combination major, a bachelor's degree in communications and political science. And I enjoyed working in the communications arena because I worked part-time as a weekend radio announcer.
Oh
And
my.
I did also.
This was in Baltimore.
This was in Baltimore County.
Okay.
And and also Baltimore City.
Okay. Okay.
So many Baltimore stations. I also worked for the former FM 106 Easy Listening Radio
Okay.
at that time, and I was a writer producer for WMAR TV for a period of time. I also interned while I was in Goucher College at WJZ TV. At the time, Oprah Winfrey was there.
Wow, that
Yes.
was exciting.
Very exciting. I had the wonderful opportunity to work behind the scenes in the newsroom as an intern when she was actually the new news anchor, co-anchor with Richard Scher. And at the time, she would tape her first talk show. I think this was her first television talk show, People Are Talking.
Right.
And so Richard Scher and Oprah co-hosted that talk show. I was there at WJZ at the time that came into fruition, and worked, for a period of time as an intern. So I got to meet her. She signed my favorite high school autograph book. Not high school, but at that time it was college. Yes. So that was a wonderful time and wonderful experience as well.
So you were really upfront and personal with the
Yes,
Oprah Winfrey.
The Oprah Winfrey.
Wow. And so I would assume that, she must have had an impact on your life, as well as you were talking about Thurgood Marshall.
Yes.
Yes, the judge,
Yes.
the Supreme Court judge,
Yes, yes.
who also was a native, right?
Baltimorean. Yes.
And it seemed like, you're following in his footsteps, Judge Barber, with going into administrative administrative law judge, as well as your passion for equal justice under the law.
I think my passion for equal justice under the law is the same as his passion for equal justice under the law.
Yes.
He saw the inequities.
Yes.
He saw that separate was not equal.
Right.
He just saw that.
Right.
And he did such amazing work in the case where he knew he was not able to get admitted into the University of Maryland School of Law, but he went to Howard.
He went to
University,
Howard, that's right.
Finished Howard and came back and sued the University of Maryland School of Law.
He actually sued?
He sued the University of Maryland School of Law for an applicant that wanted to be admitted in that law school, and he won that case.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, that's part of his history.
Wow.
That's part of his rich history. In addition to Brown versus Board of Education, and even that was a magnanimous case.
Absolutely.
It
was in 1954 when. Yes, that's right.
Yes.
That's right.
But it's amazing, in spite of all of that stellar work he did, and getting that decision through the court system, especially the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right.
But you had to have good forces working in your favor.
Yes.
Because you had to have an Earl Warren. You had to have an Earl Warren negotiating with all 9 members of the Supreme Court to get a 9-0 unanimous decision that separate but equal was no longer going to be the law in public education.
Right.
So you had to have that type of those types of forces coming together that really worked in the country's favor.
Right.
Really,
Now you were also saying that that Thurgood Marshall, the Supreme Court judge, also had a lot of resistance as a civil rights attorney.
Yes, because when you study a lot about the history of Justice Thurgood Marshall,
yes.
you will find that the integration of schools was just an extremely controversial topic and consideration for all Americans, regardless of what your color was.
Right.
Because it would be major changes,
Yes.
pulling, let's say, students out of Wiley Bates School, and then putting them in an environment in which they are the only person of color, or 2 or 3 or 4 only people of color in the entire school system, or something to that nature. And that is a tough road to hoe.
Well, we just talked about that, you know, off air, you know, about my experience, right? And we were given a choice. And I went to Stanton Center, which was Bates, in the 7th grade, and we were given a choice whether we wanted to go to Bates or Annapolis Junior High School. And I did choose to go to Annapolis Junior High School, and I did have some issues there with overt racism, but by the grace of God, I was able to stay focused and do extremely well there.
Well, you know, I'm glad you kind of said that in the sense that, believe it or not, we know from just news reports that students today are experiencing overt racism as well in schools.
Absolutely. And so it seems to me that the hands of the clock is turning back in terms of what our young people are now beginning to experience.
Not
the overt racism, we're going to talk about the mass incarceration of people of color. But before we do that, another topic that's dear to me is human trafficking. Would you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, human trafficking, as far as I'm concerned, is slavery. And you need to call it out for what it is. And, you know, the laws into how human trafficking happens is deplorable in and of itself.
Yes.
Many times it results from the fact that young people are being very secretive about what they're doing on the internet.
Yes.
They are being very secretive about, you know, who they're contacting, what chat groups they're getting involved in, and they're lured into situations and they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
You know, I never will forget a specific incident when I was actually teaching at an elementary school at one time, and it was on a temporary basis, but it's amazing how young people innocent young people are kind of caught up, because actually one of the I was working with some of the students in type of a playground arena, and this little child, she may have been maybe first grade or second grade, she came up and she hugged me innocently, and that was fine.
Right.
But then the teacher looked and pulled her to the side and said, "Do you know her? Do you know her? You do not walk up to strangers and you know, hug them as though they're friendly."
Right.
You know, and I'm glad she said that to her.
Absolutely.
To kind of jolt her and to say, don't.
Absolutely.
You know, be more on guard when you're speaking to strangers. You might be innocent, but you cannot, you know, be that gullible that you know any stranger that's in the street, you walk up to them and hug them.
Right. So as parents, we need to be more vigilant.
More vigilant.
Absolutely,
much more.
Because social media and smartphones and tablets, you know, we're allowing our children to go on these tablets and smartphones and using them as a babysitter. And our children are really getting caught up and lured into a system, the dark web.
And
it is.
Yes. And not only that, you know, when it comes to young people being lured, you know, all of a sudden, you know, you hear of missing children.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know? And many times that missing child may very well be led into a dark world
Right.
of human trafficking.
Now, what about sex offenders? Aren't there websites that you can go on and they'll give you a list of sex offenders in your area?
Well, Maryland does have a registry of sex offenders. So, yes, through more than likely state of Maryland websites, the law enforcement websites, they do have information on who's a registered sex offender, et cetera. But because the world of human trafficking oftentimes is so dark.
Right.
If that person has never been convicted, they're not going to be on that
Absolutely.
sex offender register.
Right.
So it is really incumbent upon parents to pay attention and be one step above and know what your children are doing online.
Absolutely.
Know what they're doing on the internet, what they're putting on their computers.
Right.
What apps they're using.
Absolutely.
We can't just trust them.
Absolutely.
And leave them alone as though, even To Catch a Predator.
Right.
That television
Absolutely.
program
Absolutely.
is a perfect example
Right. Absolutely.
of people getting caught.
Absolutely.
With taking innocent. Well, actually, the men are being lured in that specific situation and caught knowing they are communicating with underage young people.
Right. Well, I have some alarming statistics I think I was sharing with you about human trafficking. It says it's a worldwide industry that earns $150 billion per year from the use of forced labor. That in the United States, 2,000 are estimated to be trafficking within the United States, and 244,000 American children are estimated to be at risk, and that the average age is between 12 and 14. So I'm just adding to what you're saying. We really, really need to be diligent about watching our children, protecting our children, and giving them information about what's out there.
Absolutely.
What is the Maryland legislature doing in terms of human trafficking?
Well, I don't remember much human trafficking legislation being front and center during this last legislative session. But I do know that federal prosecution of human trafficking cases still is an important piece of trying to break up the human trafficking community. And once you ruin an innocent child's life with sex slavery, some of the harm is just irreversible.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's just it should shock the conscience of every human being, that this type of issue and condition exists in this United States of America.
Absolutely. And I've watched programs of human trafficking in the Philippines and India, and these are little babies that even some of the parents are just selling to these people. And these children are just being literally raped. And it just brought it was heartbreaking to watch programs like that. But to know that it is really being done here in the U.S. as well, even in our local communities, even in Anne Arundel County, there have been reports of human trafficking up around BWI. And they've got a whole website of cases now that they are prosecuting. And I want to continue to raise the awareness about human trafficking.
Yes.
Because our young girls are really, and even young men, their lives are being just totally ruined.
They are. And
the potential.
It's awful because sometimes human trafficking exists in hotels.
Yes.
Absolutely. And to that extent, the fact that the first question you often have to ask is, well, how did that child get there? How did the child get there? There's always been a concern about the DC case of Relisha Rudd and the fact that she's never been found. And I don't, I just don't understand, how she ended up in the man's custody where
Right.
she was.
Right.
And it just baffles my mind. But it's, I'm glad when the press keeps her name alive.
Absolutely.
I'm glad when the press does that.
Right.
Because it means you haven't forgotten about her. She's
Right.
just not another name, another statistic. She is to be remembered. She hasn't been found.
Well, I have two beautiful granddaughters. One is 26 and the other one is 21. And I've been with them since, they were born. So, and I've helped to raise my granddaughters. And so it is very close to my heart that we watch over and protect them and give them the necessary information that they need to protect themselves. Now we're going to segue into the mass incarceration of people of color. And this book, I've known about this book for, 4 or 5 years now, and it's a bestseller.
Yes.
But I really want to address that issue with you and have you elaborate on that. That our young people are really being railroaded into a prison system and relegated to a permanent second-class citizenship, according to the author Michelle Alexander.
Well, actually, that book was actually introduced to the judges of District 4 when I was district director, and Judge Kathy Surratt won the Edna Parker Award. She, in her speech, she says, "I want every judge in here to read The New Jim Crow" by Michelle Alexander.
That's right.
It's a must read. You must read it. You must read it. You must read it. And she was correct. Because that book is very enlightening, and but my major concern when you have a conversation about equal justice under the law is that we have to bring to light, the media has to bring to light inequities in the law and unjust. The unjust system,
yes.
The practices.
Yes.
So at one time when I was working this past legislative session with the legislative arm end of the Anne Arundel County NAACP, I went to an Anne Arundel County delegation on a Friday, and one of the delegates asked, when this mandatory minimum bill was in the works, and it was kind of like so how is this discriminatory? And I really wanted to respond, but I wasn't the president of the NAACP, so I did not respond. But the answer is easy. It's an uneven application of the law. That's the answer. The answer is that you have mass incarceration because you're going after and targeting people of color, or people of a specific race or background. And a perfect example would be, here in Anne Arundel County, you have a huge opiate crisis.
Yes, we do.
Well, if that were true, that sounds like there are mass users of illegal drugs that are not incarcerated. Otherwise, you would have mass incarceration all over Anne Arundel County.
Right. So, what has happened?
So what you have here is a situation where you need strong advocates to be aware of the inequities of the system, which is why you had the original mandatory minimum bill reduced significantly.
So can you elaborate on that?
Yes. Actually, there were many people that opposed the bill, and in its original form, the bill did not get passed. There was a lot of a less harmful form came out. Finally, Senate Bill 1137 and passed, and Senate Bill 101 passed the House, and it allows now for one mandatory minimum on the second time violent offenders, and it includes expunging records after 15 years of all time served, including probation. And mandatory minimums were also increased on matters of witness tampering and jury tampering.
Okay.
And that's relevant and that's important
Okay.
because you don't want you want strong laws in place when it comes to witnesses feeling intimidated and terrorized, really, to testify against, let's say a big drug dealer.
Right, right. But, my concern is when they are brand as a felon, as she talks about, they are relegated to even losing some of their civil and human rights. In terms that they're not allowed to be, in many states, have a seat at on the jury. Many of the felons don't have voting rights, and it affects they're discriminated against with housing and even food stamps, and in some states.
Well, that's a relevant point because it varies state to state.
Right.
Maryland
Okay.
did pass the Justice Reinvestment Act in 2016. And the state of Maryland does allow felons who have served their time and they are out
Okay.
to vote.
Wonderful.
They can vote.
Wonderful.
And we are progressive. The state of Maryland is progressive in that end of things.
Yes.
And, Virginia kind of also followed suit. He ran into some legal hurdles, Governor McAuliffe at the time. And so he had to literally sign off individually on each little petition of a felon to restore their voting rights.
Okay.
But that's relevant. That's a start. That's
Okay.
a start. In fact, when earlier this year, I went up to a house and I was having a conversation with someone about the upcoming election, and he specifically thought he had no rights at all. And I said, wait, no, you can vote.
Right.
You can vote.
Why is it so important, Judge Barber, that we get involved in the political process?
Oh, that's extremely important. Whenever you hear of cases of injustice,
Yes.
For example, I was reading this morning on Facebook about a young man that was arrested, and as a result of the police officer saying, "I don't think he did anything," that police officer was suspended. No, wait a minute. Wait.
I did see that post this morning.
So, my concern with inequity, what looks visually inequitable, is that every citizen that is not incarcerated should run to register to vote.
Yes.
It is the preliminary step to serve on a jury.
Right. Right.
So that when a case like that comes up to the court system,
Absolutely.
you have a seat at the table.
That's what we're talking about.
You have a seat at the table.
Absolutely.
You can weigh in
Right.
on that entire case.
Right. Right.
So it is incumbent upon anybody that is of voting age,
Yes.
to go to the link at the Maryland Board of Elections website and register to vote.
Absolutely.
People sometimes feel that jury duty can be kind of very disruptive of your lifestyle, but you don't know what case you're getting.
Absolutely.
You could be saving someone's life. You could be incarcerating someone who committed a horrible crime. You could be, part of an important case, such as, the cases that are the gun task force
Absolutely.
cases. So being on a jury is important work. And it can never be underestimated. And so many of us, we can't complain if you don't vote and you don't serve on the jury.
Absolutely.
You cannot complain if you don't do both.
Well, Judge Barber, I am truly honored to have you as my guest today. Would you offer one more important comment to our viewers? You have enlightened me, you have enlightened our viewers, and you are urging us to truly get involved in the political process.
Yes.
We have a right to
Yes.
vote.
Yes.
And that is our voting right, and we must
Right,
use it.
right,
And
right.
that is our power.
Right,
Okay.
it is.
Would you make a final comment?
Well, I am pleased at the opportunity to be here today, and I really am very, very concerned about the fact that there needs to be improvement in the criminal justice system.
Yes.
There needs to be improvement
Yes.
there, and the only way you can change inequities such as the uneven application of law and certain people being targeted through law enforcement. You've got to make sure it's visual. You know, I don't want to. I applaud people who put things on Facebook
Absolutely.
and say, "Did you see that? He pulled him over because he had a little leaf on his car." And you know, and the frivolous reasons that you're pulled over,
Right.
that needs to be magnified. You know, the number of times that happens, most of the time to people of color.
Right.
You know, magnify that thing.
Absolutely.
Let people know that this is not a one-time occurrence or an isolated incident.
Yes.
It happens, and it needs to be publicized so that the world knows that, you know, that there are inconsistencies in the law, and we have to be change agents. You're a change agent when you vote. You're a change agent when you serve on a jury.
Well, we are both change agents
Yes.
because we're here today to truly raise the awareness about the inequities in the judicial system. And I am truly honored to have you as my guest today. God bless you, and I want you to come back.
Thank you.
Because we still need to continue to raise those issues.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for watching Your Health is Your Wealth. And remember, in this very present moment, we do have the power to take charge of our life and our health and get involved in the political process because we do have power. Thank you so much.